This is Bloomberg Markets. I'm Scarlett Fu. Wall Street has embraced President Trump with open arms, seeing his pro-growth agenda as good for the finance industry. Earlier today, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, Ted Pick, weighed in on the potential growth factors when he spoke at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
The question is, what kind of growth can we generate? I think so the conversation that one would have is which comes first, sort of the potential inflationary effect of tariffs or the positive deregulatory effect. And I think that's going to be one of the things we know is that there's going to be an ongoing dialectic, which policy function can be transmitted more quickly than the other. And I think that pivoting and transitioning in the dialogue is important.
Ted Pick there from Morgan Stanley. I do want to focus on the deregulation part of that commentary. So let's bring in Nathan Dean, senior analyst covering U.S. policy for Bloomberg Intelligence. Nathan, when Ted Pick and other Wall Street CEOs talk about deregulation for the finance industry, what specifically are they referring to?
Yeah, so the first thing they're talking about is what's called the Basel III endgame. Now, this was a planned 9% increase in capital requirements, and we think that's staved off for 2025. In fact, we think banks and the deregulatory aspect for banks is really just going to be a great pause for 2025. The reason being is that the Federal Reserve still remains under Jerome Powell, and it really needs Chairman Powell to really agree with any type of regulatory reform. Now, going forward, I think you're going to see additional capital holistic reviews, maybe tinkering to the stress capital buffer or what's called the GSIB surcharge, but I don't think capital levels are going to change all that much for 2025 or even 2026 because deregulation is not a magical wand in the financial services sector. You need the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the FDIC, and the Fed to go along with that. So we're telling our clients that if you're banking on deregulatory aspects hitting the bank's bottom line, you're probably looking at 2027 at the earliest because the rest of the 2025 and 2026, they're just going to be working on it.
So I want to pick up on what you said about Basel III, because if it's going to be delayed or perhaps even eliminated completely, how does that provide a boost to the industry? Because it was never implemented to begin with.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think if it is implemented, it's going to be in a way that it's capital neutral. Essentially, the banks would tell the regulators, hey, just keep us on a level playing field with our European counterparts. But I think going forward, if Basel III is delayed, then you're going to start getting questions of what the capital regime across the globe looks like. Because just remember that Basel IV, which is their version of Basel III endgame, has already been implemented in Europe. And so if the European banks begin to have questions about their own capital levels, subsequently that will take place here in the United States as well. And then you're going to have this holistic review that starts to question whether or not more capital should be returned to shareholders. You're also going to see changes to the stress testing. I'm most likely going to guess in 2027 that would also make it easier for banks to pass those stress tests and then also be able to return the capital to their shareholders and so forth like that. So, I don't think it's going to happen immediately, but I think the banking industry can bank upon the idea that deregulation is coming and it's going to free up more capital.
Yeah, but what you're saying is a couple years from now, I guess the most immediate deregulatory move that the Trump administration can make is just that lighter touch on M&A, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, obviously, that's something the banking industry has been complaining about for a while. And, we think the Federal Reserve, the OCC, and the FDIC are going to take a new lens at M&A. And you're really going to get away from this idea of the consumer impact, which you saw under the Biden administration. And they're going to look at it in terms of dollars and size and so forth. And if you look at Capital One Discover, the combined entity is well below what PNC is or well below what a GSIB is. And so we don't think there's going to be any hiccups for the Capital One Discover merger.
All right, Nathan Dean, really appreciate it. Nathan Dean of Bloomberg Intelligence.